We've heard a lot about radical candor in the workplace, but what about radical self-awareness? Find out more in this episode of Communicate for Impact Live.
Welcome to Communicate for Impact Live, sharing stories, making connections. We're Douglas and Lisa Marie Hatcher, co-founders of Communicate for Impact, a business storytelling training and coaching firm just north of New York City. And today we are delighted to welcome Dain Dunston. Dain is a founding partner of Reservoir LLC, a coalition of executive coaches. Dain, thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here, guys.
Dain, it's awesome to have you. Now, look, I can't wait to talk about your book, Being Essential, the 7 Questions for Living and Leading with Radical Self-Awareness. Look, there's so much ground to cover here, beginning with just how timely this book is. But I want to start with the question we ask all of our authors on our program, which is, what inspired you to write the book?
Well, that's got to be one of the hardest questions to answer, because who knows what inspires us, and it's a long thing. There was never some moment I said, wait a minute, I got to write a book about radical self-awareness. It really came from this. I went back to my journal this morning and clicked through a few years, just searching for the word book to see what inspired me. About a little more than a decade ago, I'd been doing a bunch of coaching, hadn't read much about it. I was just coming out from my own practice over the years. And I came across a book by Dr. Kerry Spackman called The Winner's Bible. And he is a guy, New Zealander, who coaches Formula One drivers and Olympic athletes and even, premier soccer coaches and all the teams. So it's like in this elite coaching. These are the best performers in the world, but they need that extra 0.01% slice of mindset to get them over the top. So I found that really, really useful. And it was a whole program in his book. So I started practicing his practice. Later came across Michael Ray's book. Michael Ray teaches a course at Stanford called Creativity and Imagination. And it was a similar kind of thing. He really is going to, what's your highest ambition is the name of the book. What's your highest ambition and how do you get there and what brings you to that? So I started looking around and expanding some ideas, as you do, and wanted to do more with the ideas that were coming out of my own personal coaching, but also the coaching I was doing for other people. And what I find is that the more you think about something and write about it and get into it, that ideas expand to fill the work allotted to them. So the ideas just keep coming and growing. In 2018, I finished a novel about the rock and roll business, and sort of wanted to start a framework, started exploring a framework around the words, all business is social. Social business, social culture, social outcomes. Mm-hmm. But how do you lead that? What does it look like? Who do you have to be to lead it? And really, that was the question. That's the leadership question of our times. Who do we have to be in these disrupted times? When you turn leadership over to dysfunctional people, you get a dysfunctional world. So how do we turn that around?
And so talk a little bit about radical self-awareness. When did that phrase sort of enter your mind?
I have no idea. But somewhere along there, it was about self-awareness, but just taking that a step further and really, really pushing your way into it. So let me flip the question to what is the cost of unawareness in leadership. Dysfunctional leadership is something we've been seeing a lot in the last few years. We're seeing it globally. We're seeing it in corporations and crazy stuff happening. We say, how could a board let that happen? And we're destroying democracy. We're destroying the fabric of our society. We're destroying our environment. But just bring it back down to ground level. What is the human case for awareness? And what does it cost to our lives? If I, as a father and a husband and a colleague, if I'm unaware of myself and I'm doing unaware things to the people around me, what's that doing to them? And then what's that doing passing along? It really becomes this fabric of society that we're either patching or that we're disabling, dismantling. So here's the question. Can we have really well-run organizations run by poorly run people?
Uh,
You think about that. The Greeks talked about this at the Temple of Delphi. It said above the door, know thyself. And if you'd paid attention on the hike up to the temple and got up there, we have this long view over the valley. And what do you do at high places? You get a long view of what's going on. They would have gone in and asked better questions.
that's fascinating. And, you know, when you're in those situations, you cannot help but feel a certain smallness in comparison to the magnitude of what you see.
Sure.
And when that happens, I
Mhm.
think that helps you get into the right frame of mind as well, that it's not just about you.
We call that going above the battleground, and literally being able to lift yourself up and say, whoa, 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 whoa. What's going on in my head? I'm about to rip somebody's head off. It's too much. My to-do list is too long. I've got all of this happening over there. That didn't come through. You didn't do your job. What am I going to do? And it was, whoa, stop. I got to float up above the battleground and just kind of take a look around and have one of these moments of saying, take a deep breath and say, okay, wait a minute. From up here, I can see everything's going to be okay. I've got my head down in the weeds. Let me get up here. What's the one thing I can fix right now that's going to straighten this out? And you can do it. And that kind of awareness, I had a talk with David Abney, who is the former CEO of UPS. We talked about awareness. He said, like, awareness is 100% of his job. He said, literally from the time he backs out of his driveway at home, you know, UPS in Atlanta is huge. If he cut somebody in traffic, it's, hey, David Abney just cut me off in traffic. If he pulls into the garage and walks into the building looking like he's really steamed about something, everybody notices that. And it affects the vibration of the company. He said, woe unto me if I ever get into an elevator and don't greet everybody and chat with them on my way up. No matter what's going on in here, I have to be aware enough of who I'm being at that moment to change it and be with these people.
You know, it's interesting. I'll let Lisa Marie chime in. But, you know, his drivers have the same, you know, issue. Like if a UPS truck, you know, makes a wrong turn and cuts somebody off, that reflects poorly on UPS as well.
Absolutely. It does.
Mm-hmm. Dain, take our viewers through the 7 questions that are the centerpiece of being essential. What are those 7 questions and why did you choose them?
Okay. So the framework here is really just a loop of questions that you can start at any point, really. But the 7 questions are really designed to, let me take a minute, let me locate where I am. And this idea of self-location really goes back to the mariners of Polynesia who could, you know, travel across vast amounts of ocean, basically just using their awareness of everything that was around them. So the first question is, where am I? And, you know, okay, I'm here at the Watershed Association in Wimberley, Texas. But more than that, where am I in my mind? What's my mindset? Well, I'm talking to the two of you, and I want to make sure that I really know where I am and where my mind is as we're talking. The second question is, okay, if that's where I am, why am I here? And so you're in a situation, you find yourself, maybe it's a tough situation. Maybe you really were unaware and didn't do what you should have been doing. So I'm here because I was unaware. Okay, that's fine. Now what are we going to do about it? The other side of that question is, now that I'm here, what does this moment call me to do? And that's really important. We often find ourselves in a room or in a situation, and if we're aware, we realize there's an opportunity there. There's someone who needs our help. There's a door that wants to open. But we didn't pay attention and we didn't see it and we left it behind. So now that I'm here, why am I here? What am I called to do? So now we get to the heart of it, the 2 questions. The first question, question number 3, is who am I being? Like David Abney was saying, as he walks into the building, he wants to be aware of who he's being, just inside. And it's not judgmental. It's not, oh, you know, I aspire to be, or I promised in Sunday school I would be, or I would do this thing. No, it's right now in this moment, who am I being? Oh, I'm pissed off. I really want to, you know, rip somebody's head off. Great. So the second question is, what do I want? Do I really want to rip somebody's head off? No, probably not. What I want is probably to get out of this negative mindset and get into a positive thing where I'm saying, let me flip that to something that would really be useful in this moment. A different way of thinking, a different way of communicating. The fifth question is interesting. Now that I've made that change, what wants to happen? Or is what I think I want to do consistent with what's happening in the world around me? I want to bring out a new product, but is the world ready for that? Or has the world passed that one by? Where am I? And what wants to happen around me? The other part of it is, because I've changed my mind, what new doors now are available to me? What new doors want to open up so that I can get in and say, hey, I want to take part of that, or I want to connect with this person, and boom, the door opens up. The sixth question is a really important one. What don't I know? It's about avoiding the trap of thinking that we know. We have all the answers, and you see so many leaders walking around there. I know what to do. I know what to say. You shut up. I'm going to talk. And big mistake. Zen masters will tell you, you got to have a beginner's mind. And the beginner's mind knows nothing. And when you know nothing, all things are possible. And the other side of that is, if we were a volunteer fire department pulling up to a fire and a building's on fire, we'd have a whole list of questions that we don't know. If we ran into that building with our hoses thinking we knew the answers, we'd fall through the floor and be killed. So we have to be really clear about what we don't know and get with that. And the third question then just brings it into our whole body experience of consciousness, which is, how does this feel? If it feels right and feels I'm back to a positive sense of feeling, that's great. If it doesn't feel right, then where am I? You go back up to the top and go through it again.
And in your book, you've got a diagram that is an 8 set on its side, which looks like infinity to me.
Sure.
And you say that you can start at the beginning, or you can start at the end and work backwards.
Yeah, two of the most likely places that you would start. One is, how does this feel? Whoa, what's going on? I just feel really, and what was that feeling in my gut? Oh, what is that? What's going on? That leads you into say, where am I? The other place is, who am I being? I just saw myself yell at my dog. Whoa, who am I being? I'm busy. I know I got to get to that paper that I'm writing, but wait a minute. This dog is a puppy. He needs some time to play. He's just telling me that he wants some love. Okay, I'm called into action then. What do I want to do? I want to go be with him. So it's,
So I was just thinking about all this as it applies to parenting. When you're in the moment, that heated moment where, tempers are flaring and you just want to go with your kid.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, how can you stand there and go through all these 7 questions? And I'm thinking, is it okay just to go through 1 or 2 of those questions to kind of center yourself and make yourself pause for a moment before you react?
Yeah.
So I guess it's just a matter of practicing, and
exactly.
even if you could just do 1 or 2 of those questions in your head, it gives you enough time to pause before you react.
Exactly. And in the skill is, and it's not hard, it's just a practice. The skill is remembering to even ask, who am I being? And if you just go there, that's kind of the core of it. But if it's longer, and sometimes in a morning meditation, I will say, well, let's just review. Where am I? Oh, I'm at this point on my journey. I'm this age. I'm at this point. Here's what's happening with the book. Here's what's happening. All right. Why am I here? Well, I'm here because I've done these things. I'm here to solve this problem. And you can go through it that way, but you really don't have to. You really can just start at any point. We'll give you an example. You can run through it backwards. What am I feeling? Something's wrong. What don't I know? I've just walked into this conference room and I don't know what's happening in here, but it ain't right. Well, what wants to happen? It looks like people want to start throwing knives at each other. All right. Then what do I want? I want to find out what's going on and calm this all down, right? Who am I being? I'm being the adult in the room, and it works from any direction. So it really is a practice. So yeah, I don't want people to think that, oh gosh, I'm going to have to spend 6 minutes. Hold on for 3 minutes. While I go through the
Hold on, everybody, while I go through my 7 questions.
Yeah.
So also, go ahead,
Lisa Marie. What kind of impact do you want this to have? In other words, in other words, yesterday we just saw that you got your 5 boxes of your hard copies. what kind of impact do you want this to have? Like, how are people going to be changed by looking at, reading your book, for example?
So I'll give you an example that's I find really kind of exciting. I've been coaching for more than 30 years. And when I started coaching, I was in my mid to late 30s, and everybody else that I was coaching was in their 60s. And that started with speech coaching. After a while, I sort of noticed that the people needed some coaching of how to be when they got off stage as well. So then we started working into this. And over the years, the people I coach have gotten a little younger and a little younger. Now they're mostly younger than me. I've been coaching a group of next generation leaders and companies who are going to move up in family business. And I've got a little group of them, and they all subscribe. I've been coaching people as young as 24. And what I've gone through and running through this process and helping them solve problems using the Being Essential process and the work that we do together. 2 of the 24-year-olds have come to me and just held up a worksheet on the 7 questions and the work and said, this changed my life. This changed my life. And they're both being super successful, solving the problems that normally hit you when you're 25 and going through it. And I thought, I like that. It'd be great if people, in their senior leadership years got it. But if you have 24-year-olds saying, this is powerful, it gives me some sense that there's a relevance that we need this at this time, the ability to know who we are. And when did we ever not need that?
Good point.
And speaking of knowing who you are, could you explain to us the difference between the synthetic self, and you mentioned this in the book, the synthetic self versus the essential self? What's the difference and why does it matter?
Yeah, well, here's why it matters. It's really the question of who am I really? Because if I don't know that, if I don't know who's talking to me and telling me to go punch somebody or go quit my job or go do something, if I don't know where that's coming from, so I need to know that. And if you think about it, who we are, all of us, is a construction of things that have been built up inside of us all of our lives. If you think about it, the 3 of us at one point in our lives were lying on our back in a crib, looking up at these enormous creatures around us who seemed to be able to produce food out of thin air, who could make these sounds and to each other and seem to talk. And we were lying there thinking, look, they're so much bigger than me and they can do all these things. I can't do any of these things. And oh no, I just pooped my pants. I'm no good at all. And so that's literally the moment that we start defining a self at. That's how we define ourselves. Nobody in that moment says, I'm better than them and I will be a great champion someday. We can build that in as a construction, right? Our parents or your dad says, you're going to be a great football player, kid. And okay, I'm going to be a great football player. That's a construction. Or we get to preschool and we learn that we're a boy, we learn that we're a girl, and then the person next to us tells us something that makes us think we're no good. So we walk around in the self that was built by parents, by other preschoolers, by society, by all of this stuff, and then our own voice of fear, trying to hide the fear in our ego, we start building this up. And that's a solid construction. It's really, really hard to avoid. On the other hand, there's another voice that's under all of that. And it's the voice that when you're trying to chase that guy down the highway who cut you off and you're waving your fist out the window at him, or you've just thrown a plate across the room and you're screaming at your spouse or something, there's that voice inside that says, oh, look at me. I'm completely out of control. I'm probably killing myself here. Wow.
Sometimes your spouse can point out that you're completely out of control too.
Yeah, hopefully. But that voice is the essential self. We don't talk to that voice enough. Frank Allen, who's written a book called Changing Minds, he literally calls it as if there's 2 operating systems. We can choose at any time which one we're in, except that we don't know that we have that option. We don't know that we can choose to say, oh, look at me. I'm in my complete synthetic self. I'm being complete nuts. And I can switch over here to this other operating system, which is the calm, quiet voice that's filled with love, and everything there is love. Over here, everything is hate and fear. And
I love that. We have a choice.
we do have a choice.
I love
And,
that.
and that's part of the radical self-awareness, is
Yeah.
being able to know that you have that choice.
Yeah, exactly. Michael Ray at Stanford teaches, I mentioned him earlier, he teaches this course on creativity. He looks for an early experience, somewhere usually in elementary school age, of a moment when you felt just deeply, deeply right in the world, and everything made sense. Usually you're alone, usually you're somewhere out in nature, and you see this whole thing and you say, this is the world I live in. This is complete. I'm complete with this. And go back to that and find that and start pulling that self forward, because that little kid has something he or she wants to tell you, if you would but listen. So that's the essential self. It's the essence of who we are. And we're changing minds when we're practicing being essential. That's the whole thing. It's just changing that mind. I don't want to be that mind. I want to be this mind.
Excellent. Before we get to our closeout questions, Dain, you used a verb earlier, call, in terms of being called to do something. Could you talk a little bit more about that? I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, rather than say we're all here for a reason, I think we're all here for a lot of reasons. And I love what somebody said, the meaning of life is to ask that question. So why are we here in the largest sense? Why are we here? But also in any moment. I mentioned my puppy, who's very radical. The other morning, I was trying to get a lot of work done, and it was the third time he'd rung the bell to go out and said, okay, I'll take you out. As soon as we got outside, he started biting on the leash, and he's trying to play tug of war and drag me all around. And I can't, come on, go do your business. Finally, we oh, you just want to wrestle. I don't have time. I unhooked this thing and walked back to the house. He's meanwhile is running along trying to jump up at my waist, and it was like, and I got inside. I was actually really angry. I was just frustrated and angry. I'm tired of a lot of stuff going on. Fearful because I have work to do and what'll happen if I can't do it. And then I stopped. Whoa, wait a minute. Who am I being? I'm being a complete jerk. And why am I here? That puppy wants to play. If I don't play, he's going to be bonkers all day. So I'm being called to go give that to him. And I took some balls out and started throwing them for him and trying to teach him to bring it back and give it to me. And we had a nice time. But just because I caught that and went into it, think about times when we've walked into a room, there's been somebody there, we just were moved to say, what's going on with you? And transform themselves, but also transformed ourselves in it, just by asking that, by recognizing that, whoa, I'm here for a reason. That's why I walked into this room.
That is cool.
Very good. So let's move out to closeout question number 1 that we always ask of our guest. What's something that you have learned in the last 6 months, Dain, that you think might be of value to our viewers today?
Yeah, this is big. It's bigger than I thought. And some of this was earlier drafts of the book. Some of it came in literally in the last month of sort of doing some rewrites. And some of it is stuff that I've just been reading. But the question is this: how we experience each other is so much deeper than we know. If you think about it, we all think that we're completely separate, and we think we can see you and hear you, but that's it. Don't give me the psychic stuff. I don't want to hear this. So I want to talk to you, and then I want to go away. I don't want to be affected by you. I just want to go away. But that's not how it works. I came across this really great book and researching what I'm going to do next by Sarah Rose Kavanaugh, who's a psych professor at Assumption College. And she wrote a book called Hive Mind. And in it, she sorts through all the research on how the presence of other people affects us. Literally, when we're sitting with someone else, it deeply changes who we're being and can affect us. I'll give you an example, and it's a little bit gross, but here's an example that really struck me. Here's the experiment they did. They took men. They had them hold under their armpits a cotton pad. And they then started showing them images and videos of things that were either surprising or disgusting. Well, think about what our faces do when we're surprised. Our mouths open, our nostrils flare, our eyes go up. Wow. And think about what we do when we're disgusted. Everything closes down.
Right.
So they put these swabs in little plastic bags, take them out. Next week, they bring in a group of women. And they ask the women to just sniff each swab. And sure enough, if Lisa Marie, you were given a disgusting swab, if you were given a surprising swab, whoa. Think about a week later, just from smelling, not even being in the room with, that's how we affect the old phrase, I could smell it on him. Yes, you could. Yes, you could. And we smell it on each other all the time. So here's the question. What happens when we're surrounded by negative people? We're smelling that on them and it's affecting us. What happens when we go to positive people? A great book by Sean Acor, Big Potential. Sean talked about studies where if you go to the base of the hill, they took people to the base of the hill and had them estimate how steep that hill was. If they had someone standing beside them, a friend beside them, the hill looked 10 to 20% less steep. And that was true even if the friend was looking the other way and was 3 or 4 feet away from them. So just being in the presence of people we know and trust makes everything look more possible to us. And finally, I just want to say, this is really interesting. Dr. Roland McCready, the Heart Math Institute, he talks about, they've done a lot of studies, the heart's electromagnetic field is strong enough to affect EKGs from 3 feet away, or ECGs from 3 feet away. So think about that. It's the heart's magnetic field is 5,000 times more powerful than the brain's magnetic field and reaches out 3 feet outside of our body. So Douglas, if you were having a ECG and Lisa Marie, you sat down in the chair next to him, you would affect the ECG.
Negatively or positively.
Well,
Depends on the day.
depending on who you were.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So
here's
turn on your heart light.
Yeah.
ET.
Yeah. No.
What that speaks to is the impact that we have on people.
Yeah.
It's like
And
an
when
invisible impact, right?
And when you consider that impact, I think that you cannot help but want to be more aware of what you're doing.
Yes, because we don't know what's happening unless we're more aware. And if we're more aware, then not only can we change our experience of each other, but if we can change how we experience other people, that not only changes how they experience themselves or how they experience us, it changes how they experience themselves. And so you get a complete makeover without even knowing it, just because you were by somebody who is projecting that kind of information. And I don't mean projecting. That's not maybe expressing that. And they may not be aware that they're expressing it themselves, right?
Or maybe it's more like radiating.
Radiating is a great word.
Yeah.
This stuff is happening.
Let's go to close out question number 2. Is there a challenge, Dain, that you're facing where one of our viewers might be of help to you?
Boy, I would love that. And you had David Ed on the other day, and I really want to talk to him because it's right up the thing. Here's the question. How do we build organizations that last? There is a little company in Kyoto. It's a little tea house outside of a temple. It's been in operation by the same family since the year 1021. 1001 years in operation by the same family. In the US, we have 21 companies that are still in business that were corporations, large JP Morgan, Chase, that were founded before the Civil War. And after the Civil War, Procter & Gamble, Sherwin-Williams. Sherwin-Williams they're on their 9th CEO in 156 years.
Oh.
That's amazing. And every one of those CEOs came with the current CEO, John Marikas, worked in college and then worked his way up into an executive program so that he became an assistant store manager when he left college. He's the CEO now. That's an amazing thing. So I'm working on this for the next book. So if there's anybody out there who's got some expertise in this and can help me with this, I really want to study this. I think it's really important right now.
Fantastic. Awesome. Okay, so there we have it. Please reach out to Dain if you can help him out with that. You can reach Dain on LinkedIn at Dain Dunston, or you can go to his website, which is daindunston.com. So thank you so much, everyone. We'll have a recording of this interview on our website at communicateforimpact.com. And until we see you again, stay safe. Bye. Thank you, Dain.